You're listening to the IB4E Coaching Podcast.
Brought to you by IB4E Coaching, business coaching for executives, entrepreneurs, and small business professionals. Learn more at ib4e-coaching.com.
Hey, Coach Harlan here. Welcome back to the podcast. Hope you guys are having a phenomenal week. I'm having a great week, and I'm excited to introduce you to my guest today. Please help me welcome Whitney Teal, a visualizer blazing trails. Whitney Teal is no stranger to the marketing industry. Her beginnings in radio kickstarted her journey as an entrepreneur. She co-founded her first business in 2015 and since has helped start 4 additional businesses specializing in services for thought leaders and small to medium-sized businesses, including her current venture, the Teal Bridge. Whitney is also a founding member and ambassador of the Few Fellowship of Extraordinary Women Atlanta chapter and hosts the podcast If I Ever Live to Be, highlighting personal stories and tips for navigating life the best way possible. Whitney, thanks for coming on the program. How are you?
Oh, my pleasure and honor. Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited for our conversation, Coach.
Absolutely. No, I've been looking forward to this. So you started your first business in 2015. What was that business?
Ooh, it was kind of along the same lines of what I do today. It was still in the marketing space, but it was right at the cusp of, if everyone remembers Periscope, that came out and it was streaming. It took a little bit more than just pulling out your phone to live stream. I was still working for the radio station at the time, and we were really branching out into just kind of going beyond those radio waves and also capturing video. And so there have been many iterations and changes since then in the space and beyond.
And radio, how did you get into radio?
Ooh, well, when I went into college, I first started on the business track. So I knew I wanted to be in business. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I took that required communication speech course and I gave a speech to my class. I was invited to take that speech and then present it in a competition that we had in college. And I didn't do very well, but I loved it. I had so much fun that I changed my major. And so I went on to get my bachelor's degree. And at that particular university, they had a radio station, all our own. And so I just had so much fun being creative with it. I even had a little talk show of my own with 2 other women at the time. And I guess in a way, the rest is history. I was just applying to different places. I knew it would be down in Atlanta. And luckily, I was hired onto a radio station. And we had 3, believe it or not, 3 AM stations at the time and 1
Wow.
FM station. So I got exposed to a lot of really great things.
Nice. Very cool. You've got the voice for the radio. Awesome.
Thank you. I had to work on that. All call letters in Georgia are W something. So
Right.
the university I worked at was WBCX. And I started out saying W.
W.
And that
Nice.
got changed real quick. So thank you.
Very good. No, you definitely have the voice. I have the face for radio. You've got the voice for radio. So awesome. All right. I want to dive into your background, how you got to where you are now, who you work with and how you help them, along with all these other things. Tons of questions for you. But before we get started, I've got 10 icebreaker questions that I'd like to ask my guests. Now, listeners know these are the questions made famous on the TV show Inside the Actor's Studio, where the host James Lipton asks these same questions of his Hollywood guests from TV, film, and stage. And I figure if they're good enough for the Hollywood elite, they're certainly good enough for my guests. So, Whitney, if you're ready, 10 questions.
I'm ready.
All right. What is your favorite word?
Faith.
What is your least favorite word?
Fear.
What turns you on?
A new challenge.
What turns you off?
Having my creative freedom blocked.
With you on that. What sound or noise do you love?
The nature of outdoors, so the
Mm,
birds, wind rustling through leaves, wind blowing. So outside in nature.
nice. What sound or noise do you hate?
Construction.
It's everywhere. It's
Right?
everywhere. What is your favorite curse word?
I like to consider myself pretty clean, so it probably rhymes with bit and the thing that you say whenever you stub your toe on the corner of all furniture. So that's
Exactly.
probably the worst. I would like to think the worst thing that comes out of my mouth on most occasions.
We all have that one word that
Yeah.
when we find the corner of the couch as we're walking through at night, yeah,
Yes.
that comes out. Got it. All right. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I think it would be fun to try my hand at acting.
Hmm. Have you ever
I
been on stage?
I've not, although I'm told, and I sometimes I think it's a tease, right? And then sometimes I think people are serious that I would be very good at acting and and drama and comedy. I get that every now and then too. So if I can
Nice.
make the people around me laugh, that's good enough for me. But I think it would be fun one day. Just maybe
It
I
would
ought
be
to try
fun.
a cameo and show up somewhere.
Hey, there's a lot of little community theaters around and stuff. So yeah, why
Yes.
not? There you go. All right. What profession would you not like to do?
I very much, I will say I'm very thankful for this profession. And if I can cheat and say to really anything first responder or like doctor, surgeon, so very grateful for both of those. I do not think I would be very good at it. I don't think I have the stomach or the strength for it. It takes special people to do those jobs. And I don't know that anyone would want me doing that job.
All right. Final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
It does exist, and I would say the words that probably so many of us know very well. Well done, my good and faithful servant.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. All right. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how you got your start, all these things that you've done. Um, talk about the Teal Bridge. We're going to talk about your podcast and a lot of other stuff. At some point, transition into courage and leadership. All
That's
right.
awesome.
Cool. All right. So, listeners, make sure you stick around. We'll be right back right after this. So, stick with us. And I'm back with my guest, Whitney Teal. Whitney, thanks so much again for agreeing to be on the podcast. I've been looking forward to our conversation, and I'm looking forward to being on your podcast next month.
Yes, very
I'm all
excited.
scheduled. Yeah, it's going to be fun. So, the Teal Bridge suggests connection and transformation. What inspired the bridge theme, and how does it reflect your mission?
Yeah, it really does. Obviously, the teal part of it comes from my last name, and really my what I would consider my family legacy, people who have just really invested in me as a person, watching, and being inspired by my father, my grandfather, and my family. Um, the bridge part is what you mentioned, all of those things and more. It's connection, it's getting someone from point A to point B. It's that growth aspect. And I love it because my logo is like a bridge encapsulated almost, right? There's like a circle around it. So there's also that connection of community as well, and just bringing people together. I love that.
Nice. Very cool. So, tell me about how you got your start. Did you know from an early age that you wanted to be a communication expert and storytelling? Were you a storyteller growing up?
Well, I am an only child, so that probably goes back to that joke of earlier that I could do acting, and I'm a little bit. entertaining, but I was okay being by myself. Like I was creative enough to where I could play by myself. I tend to hang around and enjoy the company of like older individuals. I just love hanging. Sorry for the term. I'm sure there's something, but I love hanging around with the elderly. I feel like there's so much to learn and absorb from them. And so it was probably always there. The storytelling aspect, I think it has refined itself and grown as I've gotten older, both as I have experienced life, but I also feel over the years I've become a better listener. And that is really one of the best compliments someone can give me is that, wow. And you probably experienced this, Harlan, on the podcast of like the listening. And when someone tells you you made them feel so welcome and they felt like they could be genuine and share their story. I love that. So
Yeah.
I would say being a good storyteller is less about being able to talk necessarily and a whole lot to do with how good of a listener you are.
Yeah. It's funny. I talk to people and they admit that the interesting people in the meetings, the networking they go to and stuff are those people who listen. Not the people who are talking. It's all about me, 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 me. It's the
Yes.
people who listen or ask you a question to draw you out. That's what people are looking for.
Yes. Love
Nice.
that.
So you talk about helping people tell their stories that connect in a world overloaded with content, the noise that we're surrounded by. Um, what makes a story truly resonate today?
I really think it goes back to authenticity and vulnerability. And those are hot words, right? We hear them a lot. They're thrown out a lot. And they have to be used in the right context. But I feel like that's what people really want to see and hear. And the funny thing is I don't really know that that's changed over the years. I feel like it's even more valuable now. I feel like we're surrounded by cookie cutter posts, chat GBT generated statements, and so many of us are just truly seeking that genuine connection. And I feel like if you are genuine someone, that's exactly what you're going to get back. But you have to be genuine first. Sometimes we have to be willing to take that first step and open up.
Yeah, absolutely. And so working with your clients, you guide them on how to get their story out and how to make those connections. How do you because I've got a ton of stories. I've lived a awesome life, I think, full of adventure and travel and all this stuff. I have tons of stories to tell. I don't always know how to connect them to uh, my clients.
Yeah.
When I'm posting, you want something that kind of ties into what you do. Or this is who made me, or what made me who I am. How do you help your clients make that connection between their story and their clients?
Yeah. Well, I'll show you a really good example. A client of mine that I just adore. He's a really good mentor of mine, and I've worked with him for close to 10 years. He's a leadership coach. And so, what's really interesting is he's written books, he will write articles, we'll take some pictures and things like that of him traveling and going and visiting with different clients. But the posts that always perform the best have to do with something around his family. And how we do that and still incorporate it in that coaching working realm is he'll often highlight his children at work. So like their first job or their, in high school versus their first job out of college, how things have changed, how they interact with people, life on their own, that first job, when they become a manager for the first time. We've even talked about his pets and how his pets have their own little personalities. And that's kind of like all of us in the workplace, right? We're all different. Some of us are German Shepherds and some of us are Labrador Retrievers. And so, even though those are seemingly totally opposite things, he's able to take them and really bring them back and relate them some way, somehow into the work that he does. So, I believe that there's a connection point of which you can do that. And again, bringing in a little bit of that vulnerability. But the key is that's not every post. So it's not every post about his family. We still very much focus 90% on, his work and travel. But that's just a really good example of like, okay, here's his business as a coach. Here's how it relates to family in the real world as well.
Got it. But every post doesn't have to be necessarily about business. You can just do a personal post. Here I am standing at the Eiffel Tower or whatever.
Yeah, and I think, another key point to that is not every post is necessarily roses and rainbows. I think we see a lot of that and again, this is, age old where it's the highlight reel on social media. And so I feel like, and you don't have to reveal all. You still need to have that persona in your business of where people feel like they can come to you and trust you, but maybe sharing that you had a difficult day or you had to make a difficult decision, or sometimes, especially as leaders, we don't know what the answer is. And it's
Yeah.
okay to verbally state that. Doesn't mean that you're not doing your job or you won't know that answer, but maybe right now you're just not sure what to do.
Yeah. And that's one of the types of courage we talk about is the intellectual
Yes.
courage, being able to say, I don't know. That's tough for some leaders. They think they have to be the smartest person in the room, and they're afraid saying, I don't know, or I'm not sure.
Yeah, it really is.
Mm,
And something to consider too is how long have you been with that team?
yeah.
Um, if you've been established, if you've been at that, with that particular organization for a while, you've got a little bit more freedom to do that. If you're a brand new hire, that would, that might be something that you want to consider how to curtail that and maybe reveal that in a different way. But I think most of it kind of builds that psychological safety, right? If I can say, wow, my boss is dealing with a little bit of this, I'm dealing with a little bit of this too.
Yeah. It does. Yeah. It makes that connection where you feel, oh, he's not that much different. We're, we're the same, right? It's camaraderie. It's like so my background is organizational change management. So we go into companies that were undergoing some merger acquisition, some process reengineering, restructuring, something like that, working with the teams. And a lot of times we would have team building days where we take them off and do rock climbing, something to where they're learning to work together. And that shared experience, the shared failures, it brought them closer together. And they felt vulnerable then to be able to say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help? So yeah,
I love that. Absolutely.
interesting. So uh, your work bridges communication, DEI, leadership, right? How can leaders better use storytelling to create a more inclusive workplace without coming off as performing? You know what I mean? 'Cause sometimes you can tell they're up there giving a speech and they try to make it sound, real personable, and it's like, you're faking it. I can tell
Right.
you don't really mean these things you're saying.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that, Harlan, goes back to the act of listening because one, I'll say easy way to be vulnerable and to use those stories is when you hear them in the moment. If you are rushing from meeting to meeting and project to project and you're just in and out and you're not actively listening, it's a little bit hard to stop in the moment and present one of those stories that maybe a colleague or a family member for that matter needs to hear. In my bio, you mentioned the Fellowship of Extraordinary Women that's based in Atlanta, and typically when we have our meetings, what's interesting, it's a great example, but we typically have a set agenda, a leadership principle, something that we're going to talk about, and so many times we have started in on that, but someone will share something that they're going through in their life, and in the best way, it derails what we talk about for that day, right? It's just a gathering and everyone feels safe in that space. And so we all go around and start sharing, I'm dealing with this too. So it's almost like a chain reaction to where, again, if you're listening and you're willing to open up in that moment, other people will too. And it's one of those things that just can't be rushed. And that's one of our greatest enemies today. We're always in a rush. We're always distracted. And so that feels a little bit counterintuitive, but that's really what must take place if we want to be those genuine storytellers.
Nice. I like that. So for leaders that are struggling to clearly communicate things like their vision, mission, their purpose, where should they start? What's that first bridge that they need to build?
I think and I stand on the shoulders of giants because I did not come up with this. I get the pleasure to listen to so many other podcasts and leaders, and I just really love the work I do. I'm constantly exposed to it, and so a recent podcast that I just listened to was with Brandon Smith and Kevin Eckenberry. And what they were talking about this exact same thing. And Kevin detailed the approach may change. So, like, we have AI and all this new technology, and everyone's worried about the fact that it's going to replace us as humans and replace our jobs. I I'm not quite on that boat. I think that there are some things that we still need as humans. And the values and the purpose, the vision of the company that you work for, the nonprofit you're a part of, your own personal values in life, those shouldn't change. The way you approach what you do may change. But if you take it back to basics and say, okay, what is the purpose here? What is the vision? What do I want to do? That should remain the same. And if you're able to do that, then that kind of serves as your compass. So when maybe you don't know the answer or while things are happening in the world, you can go, okay, I've got the compass. This is where we're going.
Nice. Yeah, I working with my clients. I talk about their different strategies to accomplish whatever goal you're after, right? Um, you've
Absolutely.
heard more than one way to skin a cat, right? We all know that. 50 ways to leave your lover. There's a lot of different ways to do whatever it is you're after and stuff like that. Pick one strategy and start working that strategy. Measure your progress. And if it's not getting you where you want to be, change strategies. Don't change the goal, but change the strategy, the way you're attempting to do it.
Yeah. It even goes back to that word I don't like of fear, right? And I'll take it back to my beginnings. When I was in radio, those conversations were happening 10 years ago of radio was going to go away. Radio's going to go away. But technically we kind of sort of replaced podcasting with it. So this method of communication that we have didn't go away. It changed a little bit.
Yeah.
So again, we're still communicating. Maybe it's a little bit different, but don't fear that it's going to go away. And if that compass is okay, I have a message that I need to communicate, maybe it's not on an airwave, it's on the World Wide Web, but you're still communicating that goal. You're still on the same path forward.
Yep. Very cool. So, uh, are there any like common mistakes people make in their messaging or telling their stories, getting their point across? Things. What do you see people struggling with most?
Selling disguised as storytelling.
Mm, I hate that.
Yes. And
Yes.
it can be hard to recognize. But if if you're telling the story and focusing on the why or the lesson for the day, you're communicating your area of expertise through that story. Someone watching and listening can say, Harlan, you know what? He sounds like he knows what he's doing. I'm just going to call him and get his help with this. You did not have to say, call 867-5309 to figure out how to do a reel. That's so much more engaging than, hi, I'm Whitney and I'll do a reel for you. Send me a DM. No, why don't
Yeah.
I just do a reel and show you how important it is?
Nice. And that's where that authenticity comes in too, right? You're not pretending to be something to try to sell something else. This is it. This is who I am.
Yes. And
Nice.
keeping in mind how you present yourself online as well. I just had someone ask me the other day if I felt so LinkedIn is my personal best performing platform. And someone asked me if I felt like LinkedIn Premium was worth it. And I was like, honestly, I go back and forth. I'll have
Mm,
moments where I need it, and then I'm like, I don't really need this anymore. Why am I paying for it? And that's because I'm not necessarily looking for business through LinkedIn, it happens in a genuine way based on real life connections in person and the content I'm putting out and other people sharing it that already know me and getting the word out. But there are some people that just accept every connection that comes their way.
Right.
I do not do that. Depending on what your profile says, I know exactly what you're going to do, and I accept that connection request, and I know the message that's going to go in my inbox. It's going to be, do you need this service? If I can predict that, probably not going to add you. Again, I don't I don't want to be sold to.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and I get a lot of, connection requests. Would love to connect. Would love to be part of your network or have you part of my network. And I think, oh, that's nice. And then the long ads start coming.
Yes.
Yeah. Stop it, people. Stop it.
Not genuine in the
No,
least.
just stop. So, what's been the most surprising lesson you've learned from your work in radio? You're working with nonprofits, you're working with leaders and communication and marketing and all this. What's the biggest lesson you've learned?
I'd say to embrace change. Embrace change. I am risk adverse, which is an interesting thing to say as a business owner. So I don't really like taking a risk. I don't really like change, but both of those things are inevitable. And so if you can prepare yourself the best way possible, if you can put as many processes in place, if you can align yourself with the best possible people, and that even goes to, I mean, you've got to be so careful who you let in your circle because someone can just squash an idea that could be a game changer for you. So you have to be so careful in that. If you can do that and make corrections as soon as you feel that something is off, but it's essentially embracing that change. Like just know it's going to come. Know it's going to come. Something's going to pop up that you weren't prepared for. And what you've got to do is the best you can do on your end so that you're prepared to handle that thing that crops up. I think of Steve Jobs, right? That always wore a black t-shirt. It said,
Hmm.
you know, he did that because that was like one less thing that he wanted to use his
Right.
brain power on. It's a little bit like that.
Yeah. And as a change management person, that's something we try to tell everybody. Change is going to happen, whether you want it to or not, whether you expect it to or not, it's going to happen. And change management might be a misnomer because you don't really manage the change. You manage
Mm,
the outcome of the
yeah,
change, right? How can we guide this? How can we use this to our advantage? And oh, something came up. All right, what do we do with that? How do we get that back on track and things? So yeah,
that's a great
nice,
point. Absolutely.
nice. So radio personality, writer, strategist, speaker, podcast host. Which of those roles feels most natural for you?
I'd say podcaster.
Yeah.
Yes. I just love having conversations with others. Um, I'd like to have more speaking gigs. But what's interesting is as much as I prepare for that and as many of them as I do, I still get those butterflies that I have to,
Sure.
overcome before you step up on the stage. So
Sure.
I really
But
love
you have
having
to. That shows you're authentic.
this
If
is
it gets to
true.
the point where it's just by rote, you just walk out there and blah, 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 it doesn't mean anything. I had a professor in college. He would walk in late, walk up to the podium, open up his folder, and just read. Turn the page, read, turn the page, read, close the folder, and walk out. There was no engagement. He wouldn't even look at the students. And it's like he hates his life. He hates being here. You could tell that he wasn't, engaged with us, and it was hard for us to stay engaged. So,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I love the conversations. I learn from every single person I have on the podcast. I learn something. That's cool.
Same.
So, tell me about your podcast.
Yeah, so I've been again in radio background and podcasting space well over 10 years. I've had different show titles, different points of the show. And so this latest one, If I Ever Live to Be, I think I'm coming up on 2 years with this particular show and title. But I really wanted to open it up a little bit more and just not be only business owners. A lot of my guests are business owners,
Mhm.
but I like to get to the story behind the individual and whatever it is they're doing. So if they do own a business or a nonprofit, or if they're the CEO of some company, I love to hear the why behind it and that journey of how they got there. And there's always a story. It's either
Yeah.
one that was like life was really difficult, and everyone told that person you're never going to make it, and they're like, I will prove you wrong. Thank you very much.
Nice. Yep.
Um, or there's like a passion, right? Of maybe someone died in their life from cancer, and they were like, I want to do what I can to make this different, or prevent someone from hurting in the same way. So
Do you have your
abs-
favorite episode
ooh.
or episodes?
That's a hard one, Harlan, because I'm the same. I learn something new from each guest, and they each have a unique story. What's interesting is I feel like most of the guests that I have talked to, there is that common theme of that faith, of that resiliency that they continue to push through. And the reason why I titled this podcast If I Ever Live to Be. So that's like the overarching, that's the podcast, right? But every episode is something I aspire to be that essentially that person embodies. And sometimes it's a little bit of a, I guess you would say, an oxymoron, because one of them, for example, is titled Brave. So if I ever live to be brave, I don't know that you arrive to that. I think that's an
Right.
ongoing daily challenge
Mhm.
to show up and to be brave. But that's the title of that one. And it truly is like, okay, if I live to be brave, if I live to embrace this, what can I learn? What can I learn from these individuals? So yeah, each title is something that I would like to be one day
Very
when I
cool.
grow up.
Very cool. And you titled them after the guest?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I started trying to title my podcast episodes based on some of the questions I was asking, but the conversations always kind of have a mind of their own. So now I wait till it's all over. I go back and listen through, and I pick up that one key phrase that I think, oh, that's a pivot point, on
Yeah.
this episode. Yeah.
I've had some where I thought, okay, I think this is going to be the title of this episode. And by the time the show is over and the conversation's recorded, I'm like, nope,
Yeah.
it's changed completely.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. All right. Let's talk about courage.
okay.
We talk about uh, where you find the courage. I ask people where you find the courage to leave the comfort zone, the safety net of your 9 to 5 job to create your own success. Where did you find the courage to be the keynote speaker, to write the book, to be on the radio, to start a podcast? Um, you were an only child. Have you always been courageous?
Ooh. I don't feel that I've always been courageous, but deep inside, I feel like that answer is yes, because I did the thing, right? So even though I might have been afraid or wasn't really sure how it was going to work out, or I knew if it didn't, the blame would fall on me because I don't have a sibling to blame it on. I feel like that eventually kind of bubbles up, and that's where you just have to do the thing. And that's where, if the question is where does my courage come from, it's out of doing
Yeah.
it. I love telling about Orange Theory Fitness. I don't like to work out. I know it's needed and I know it's important, but I don't like to do it. And so I had a friend that was in great shape. And I was like, "What, yo, what are you doing?" She was like, "Orange Theory." And I was like, "Oh, God." So, of course, you can go to a free class, right? I hated it. I almost died. At least I feel like I did, right? I immediately signed up because I knew if I went home and thought about it, I wasn't going to do it.
Never go back. Yep.
It's really the same thing with starting a business. I mean, you've got to have the concept there, and it's really great to have some proof of the pudding, right? So even
Yeah.
through my first business, I kept a toe in radio, so I still had my full-time job, and I started out doing other things part-time. And that grew, and I eventually had enough people, enough clients where I was like, okay, you've got to make a decision. You're either going to go in this full-time for yourself, or you're really going to have to scale this back, let it go, realize
Yeah.
that's all you're going to be able to do, and you're going to have to stay in your corporate gig. And I said, okay. And I took the leap. So I had
Good
like
job.
I had to check the parachute and make sure the parachute was
Sure.
working, but I
Yeah.
did jump off the
Yeah. You're
cliff.
always feeling, is it still there? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm good. I'm good. And you talk about not having anybody to blame. I have three brothers. So whenever something went wrong, mom would line us all up and we're all going, no, he did it. He did it. He did it.
Yep.
So we all got, yeah,
Not
reprimanded.
me.
Yes. All got reprimanded. In fact, yeah, my mom used to say, I don't know which one of you did it, but I know the rest of you have gotten away with something that I never found out about. This is for you. Boom. So, yeah, we all got it.
That's true. It's kind of like when I
Um,
get a speeding ticket. I try not to complain because I'm probably like, I've probably gotten away with it several times,
yeah,
so I'll
it
take
evens
this
out.
one.
Yeah, all works out in the wash. Yeah, exactly. Is there a type of courage that you think is most important for people starting out on their entrepreneurial journey?
In yourself. So I definitely think you have to have that inner courage. I think you have to find that circle that you can find strength from when yours lacks. So sometimes you're trying something new and everything goes your way for a time. And I've been avoiding saying this word because I don't like it. I don't like talking about it, but I kind of think something that's so unpredictable, like when we went through COVID, that was unpredictable. No one had ever been through that before. We weren't sure that we were going to survive, and so many businesses didn't.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who face tragedy, and you still have to continue on. I
Mhm.
lost my mom the year I turned 30. I still had the
Mm.
business. I think I got one day right to take that and mourn it, which was the day of her funeral, and then the very next day I picked up and had to keep forging ahead.
Wow.
But I had other people that I can lean on when I felt like I'm not really sure I can do this. I'm
Yeah.
not really sure I can do this. And so again, having that sacred circle, really, for lack of a better term, of where,
Yep.
okay, if your courage is lacking, somebody else can pour into you and say, you're going to be okay. You're going to make it. What's the phrase of we've survived 100% of the days that we've lived through?
Right.
Sometimes we have to be reminded of that. And so the people that you surround yourself with makes a whole lot of difference
Yep.
when you get to those difficult points.
Absolutely. Yeah, that circle is important. Definitely. Um, what do you look for in a leader?
Someone who will come along and guide you, but allow you to make mistakes. If you don't make the mistake, and when I say make the mistake, I mean make the mistake in the sense of like, let's acknowledge it. I did wrong, or, I forgot a step in the process, whatever the case may be, and not be just absolutely torn down because of that immediate mistake. Being able to see it and learn from it and say, okay, and move on and live to try another day, live to make another mistake. I think that's so important for a leader is you've really got to allow others to make mistakes.
Sure.
Um, that's typically just on the other end of like some great breakthrough or some great idea as it
Exactly.
is.
Yeah, mistakes are that's where you learn. If everything goes peachy keen all the way through, you're not going to learn anything, right? The mistakes are where you learn. And I was told a long time ago, learn from other people's mistakes because you'll never live long enough to make them all yourself.
That's so
There you
true.
go.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Um, is there a certain type of courage that a leader needs to acquire or gain to be a good leader?
Yeah, I don't know what term I would connect with this, but at a certain level it's everyone above you. That's really what leadership
Mm,
is. Um Being able to make the sacrifices that need to be made and think of your team and organization as a whole and not just yourself. You know, as you're coming up the ranks and if there's no one underneath you or even just as you're learning, right? I almost think of like we're like birds that are coming out of the nest and learning how to fly. And we have to focus, like, I have to know how to be able to fly before I can lead anyone else. But once you get to that certain level, it's everyone else above you. And that takes a lot of courage because you're having courage that you're trying to make the best decision possible, but you're also having courage in your team and the fact that you have the right people inside your organization to be able to do
yeah.
that. It also takes courage when you need to let someone go.
Mm, those difficult decisions
Yes.
and the tough conversations you have to have. Yeah,
And
it's all part
someone
of it.
has to someone has to make them. And they
Hmm.
do have to be made because all of your A players are going to get rather upset and start to leave you if they feel like, they're doing their job and everyone else is, but yet
Hmm.
everyone just stays on forever with zero repercussions. So the
Yeah.
leader has to know, okay, somebody needs to go.
Wow. Yeah, it reminds me. We worked at a client up in the Boston area, and it was a big change program that we were going through, and we tried to get this VP to communicate better, talk about what's going on, why the decision was made to do this, how it's going to impact the group, how it's going to make their jobs better or worse. Be honest with them. And he said, I don't need to tell them anything. They'll do what I say. And I go, really? And he said, if they don't, they'll be on the outside looking in. I said, well, okay, bully for you. Here's my prediction. You're going to lose your top people
Yep.
because they know their value and they know they can get paid to do this somewhere else. And you're going to lose the very bottom people because they're afraid for their jobs as it is. And you just made it worse for them. You're going to be stuck with that mediocre middle and
Mm.
production, performance, productivity, profit, everything is going to tank. And he didn't believe it. And it did. And he was let go of his job. Yeah. Mm,
Sometimes it takes a little time for those things to weed out, but they eventually do.
they will. Yes. They work themselves out one way or another.
They do.
So, what's next for you? What's on the horizon for you?
Ooh. I do want to write a book one day. I feel
Nice.
like that's like 5 year, 10-year goal. I get asked that quite a lot and told that I should write a book and I'm like, well, I just don't feel like I'm there yet, right? Like I've got a lot of experience and experienced a lot in life, but I also I want to like culminate that, right? Like I don't know that I'm ready to tell everyone and like this is what you get out of all that, or this is the encouragement at the very end of the book, right? So I'd love to be able to do that one day. I definitely want to take my speaking up a notch. So I would love to speak on more stages. Just a couple of months ago, I spoke in front of 250 individuals.
Nice.
That was the largest crowd for me. And I'd done it before, smaller groups. I've been on panels and things like that. But
Hmm.
I guess it would almost be like a musician in the sense of like just that energy that you felt from the
Sure.
crowd. And again, so many people came up after that event and just shared with me how much they learn. And I thought, you know what, that's great. Again, um, I love learning, and so I love listening in and absorbing. That's why I do the podcast. I hope that every guest that comes on my show feels like they talked more than I did, because I'm really just prompting and responding and asking the questions. But it's nice to kind of have a little bit of that in reverse as well. And so that was a lot of fun. I'd love to do more speaking
Very
gigs
cool. Yeah, very cool. That'd be awesome.
and be challenged.
Sure. Well, yeah, that's all the fun, right? That's part of it. If it's not challenging, then it's kind of like, you know,
Absolutely.
very cool. Whitney, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the program. If people want to learn more about you, about Teal Bridge and everything that you do, if they want to learn about your podcast, If I Ever Live to Be, uh, how can they do that? What's your website?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest spot is probably the tealbridge.com. There's all the goodies and links there. The podcast is up on iTunes and Spotify. I'm everywhere on social media, Whitney Teal, Teal, just like the color. And I'm also, like, my handle is Whitney Comms, so like communications, but just Whitney Comms. And those are all the things, and update the podcast regularly, and we will certainly be promoting when we have you on mine as well, Coach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. It's in
Dang.
just a few weeks, I think. Very cool. Well, Whitney, this has
Because
been
it'll be
great. Thank you.
July, and then it'll be
It
Christmas.
it's all I know. I'm waiting for the
Sorry.
Christmas music to start, right? They start putting ornaments out and Christmas music and stuff. It's like it's still summer.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Hate that. All right. Whitney, thank you so much again for being part of this. And listeners, hope you guys are taking a lot of notes, a lot of good information here. I will have links to Whitney's website, tealbridge.com, links to the podcast, If I Ever Live to Be. And when you get your book out, we'll have you back on the podcast and talk about your book. How's that? Awesome.
Fantastic.
All right. Guys, share this episode with your family, friends, colleagues, and stick around because there's always more coming. That's it for me, Coach Harlan, saying so long for now.